Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're going to fall into one of those sneaky little questions that doesn't just sit quietly in your head, it expands, slowly, like ink in water. It seeps into the edges of your certainty. And before you know it, you're not sure if you're lying in bed or dreaming you are. Imagine you're resting your head on a pillow, a soft one, memory foam, perfectly molded to the shape of your skull. You exhale, you let go. And right as you start to drift off, a strange thought floats up like a balloon you didn't mean to release. You can either rethink everything or fall asleep without even noticing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Are you still in yesterday or already floating into tomorrow now? Turn down the lights, maybe crank up the AC for some soft noise, and let's get started tonight. Section 1. You close your eyes. You feel your body sink, and the first paradox curls around your thoughts like a kitten on warm laundry. If dreams can feel real while you're in them, how do you know this moment isn't one you've had dreams before vivid ones? Flying over a city, arguing with a duck in a courtroom, running from someone who is also you but somehow wearing your fifth-grade teacher's face. And in all of those moments, you never once questioned the logic until you woke up. You only doubted the dream after it ended. So why do we trust this moment more than that one? That's the paradox of the pillow. The softest thoughts often hide the sharpest questions. You can test reality all you want. Pinch yourself. Flip the lights on and off. But a lucid dreamer can do all those things too. In fact, some researchers studying lucid dreaming like Stephen LaBerge from Stanford trained themselves to blink in code while dreaming to signal their awareness from inside the dream. They were awake, inside sleep. A mind fully conscious within a world that wasn't real. So which part of them was dreaming? Philosophers still argue about this. And not in the abstract, tweed jacket, beard-scratching way. I mean real questions with real teeth. If your entire experience of the world happens inside your head, every sound, every color, every feeling, then you never experience the world directly. You experience an edited version of it. A re-rendered CGI approximation tailored to your senses. You're not touching the tree. You're touching your nervous system's best guess of the tree. A neuroscientist might call it a simulation in the brain, but I like to think of it more like a stage play. Your brain is the director, the actor, and the audience all at once. And somehow it convinces you the curtain is reality itself. Here's a weird fact in certain lucid dreams. People have practiced tasks like playing piano or doing squats and shown measurable improvement when they woke up. That's right. Your fake push-ups in dreamland actually helped your real muscles. Your imaginary piano concerto made your real fingers better. Your brain doesn't seem to care if it's training in reality or rehearsal. And you're just lying there, trusting that the ceiling is real, trusting that the bed won't disappear, trusting that the voice in your head is, well, yours. But what if this voice mine has already slipped into your dream? Don't worry. That wasn't a threat. It's more of an invitation to lean a little closer, to notice the blur at the edges of your thoughts, to start poking the dream and seeing if it pokes back. Let's play a little game before you drift off. Imagine you're holding a glass marble, heavy, cold. You roll it in your hand and watch it reflect the moonlight. Then I ask you, is the marble real? You say yes. Of course. Then I ask, is your memory of holding it real? Still yes. But now imagine I say you were dreaming the marble. There was no moonlight, no glass, no you. Now, which part of that experience do you let go of? First, your fingers. Your belief in the marble, your belief in you. Because here's the trick. Something has to be real in order to question what's real. But no one agrees what that something is. Is it consciousness, logic, a god in the machine? René Descartes famously tried to solve this with his, I think. Therefore I am thing. But that's just fancy French for, hey, something's definitely happening in here. He tried to doubt everything except the fact that he was doubting. But even that feels a little wobbly if dreams can imitate doubt. One time, I had a dream I was arguing with a philosopher in a canoe about whether we existed. He was eating yogurt and said, "I only believe in the taste of mango." Then he paddled away. I woke up confused and craving fruit. The brain doesn't need reality to generate logic. It just needs data. And sometimes, your data includes yogurt philosophers and courtroom ducks. So as your breathing slows and your pillow cradles the last bits of consciousness. Just consider this. Maybe the point of reality isn't to be certain of it. Maybe the point is to enjoy the question, and maybe, just maybe, you're still dreaming. Section 2. You open your eyes, not because you woke up, but because in this strange, shifting narrative, your mind just decided to give you eyes again. There's no bed, no blanket, just the mirror. You're standing in front of one, but it's the kind of mirror that gives you pause not because of what it shows, but because of what it might be hiding. At first, it seems ordinary, rectangular, slightly smudged from imaginary fingerprints. But the longer you stare, the less certain you become that the reflection is really you. Your expression doesn't quite match your thoughts. Your eyebrows twitch half a second too late. Your image smiles, but you didn't. And that's the problem with mirrors. They're not honest. They just reflect what your eyes send to your brain, and your brain, bless its unreliable nature, edits everything, even your own face. Scientists still argue about this, the way our perception warps what we believe is objective reality. It's not that mirrors lie on purpose. It's that they tell the version of the truth that you already believe in. Like an algorithm trained on your insecurities. You might think, but I know what I look like. Really, without a mirror, describe your own face exactly. Not roughly. Not I have brown eyes and a medium nose. I mean the texture of your skin, the exact slant of your smile, the shape your eyelids make when you're almost crying but pretending not to. Try it. And then notice you're reconstructing yourself like a sketch artist with a fading memory. Your image of your own face is mostly memory, bias, emotion, and social feedback. There's even a name for this, the mere exposure effect, a psychological phenomenon where you tend to like things you see more often, including your face, which is why mirrors are comforting. And unflipped photos often make people cringe. Because your brain isn't wired for objective truth. It's wired for recognizable comfort. Here's a weird fact. There's a psychological disorder called prosopagnosia, or face blindness, where people literally can't recognize faces, even their own. They have all the senses. Vision is fine, memory is fine, but the recognition part. The part that says, hey, that's mom gone, erased, like someone cut the index labels off their mental filing cabinet. So they rely on other cues like voice or smell or clothing to figure out who's who, which means your face might not even be the part of you that matters most. Let that sink in for a second. You're sitting there, trusting your reflection, when in truth, your brain is stitching together a narrative based on lighting, mood, familiarity, and the general hope that you don't look too weird today. And this brings us to the perception paradox. The more you try to see yourself clearly, the more distorted the image becomes. It's like trying to take a selfie in the fog. You adjust your angle, you shift the lighting, you hold your breath. But somehow, every version feels a little wrong, a little off-center. Like the you in the mirror is watching you and not the other way around. One time, a psychologist did an experiment where people were shown subtly morphed versions of their own faces, some slightly more attractive, some slightly less, and asked to pick the one that looked most like them. Most people picked the more attractive version. Why? Because their brains already thought of themselves that way. You don't just see your face. You remember it. You interpret it. You forgive it. And that forgiveness is baked into perception. So what's real, the face you see in the mirror, or the one that shows up in a candid photo when you weren't ready? Maybe both. Maybe neither. There's a quiet horror in this. If you let it in, you've never seen your own face directly, ever. You've only seen representations of it, mirrors, photos, videos, reflections in spoons, if you're into that. Which means your entire idea of what you look like is based on proxies, digital impressions, delayed light, bent glass. And once again, your brain does the heavy lifting to convince you that it's all solid, all trustworthy, but it's not. And it never was. Remember that face in the dream, the one that seemed familiar but wasn't quite yours? Maybe that's the more honest version. Maybe dreams show us how little control we really have over our self-image. And if that's true, then who exactly are you performing for your reflection? Your friends, your inner critic, who sounds suspiciously like your middle school gym teacher? Or maybe you're performing for your own memory, trying to leave behind an image that your future self can believe in. Something to hold on to when the real mirror starts to fog up. If you're still awake, here's a gentle trick to try next time you're in front of a mirror. Look into your own eyes. Keep staring. After 30 seconds or so, your face will begin to shift just slightly. This is called the Troxler effect. Your brain begins to filter out what it thinks is unnecessary detail, and your face becomes ghostly, shifting, uncertain. Now, don't panic. You're not haunted. You're just witnessing your perception falling asleep. So as you breathe in and let it go, consider this. You don't see things as they are. You see things as you are. And sometimes, even mirrors dream. Section 3. You're sitting in a room, or maybe not. You haven't looked down in a while. Have you? The surface beneath you is uncertain. The air feels artificial. And somewhere, maybe, there's a quiet hum, faint and steady, like the distant whir of machinery just below perception. It's the kind of moment when your thoughts slip into that hazy middle ground between suspicion and surrender, a background itch you can't quite scratch because something feels programmed. And that's the simulation on standby. You blink. The light doesn't flicker. The walls don't glitch. But the thought persists, like a browser tab you can't close. What if this isn't real? What if this is all code? It's not a new question. Plato asked it with shadows on cave walls. Descartes asked it with a demon whispering lies. But today, it comes wrapped in algorithms and GPUs and Elon Musk, scientists, philosophers, Reddit commenters. They still argue about the simulation hypothesis, the idea that we're not in base reality, but some hyper-advanced rendering of it, created by entities far more sophisticated than us. Not gods, maybe, but programmers. And here's the kicker statistically. Some experts say it's actually more likely that we're in a simulation than not. That's right. More likely. Because once a civilization creates the ability to simulate conscious experiences, they'll probably run millions, maybe billions of them. And if that's true, then the odds that you're the real one become infinitesimally small. Welcome to cosmic identity theft. But let's not panic. Let's poke it instead. Imagine walking into a room and everything is too perfect. The walls don't echo. The fruit bowl always has the exact same number of apples. Your neighbor smiles the exact same way every morning, like an NPC waiting for a quest to begin. You begin to suspect, and the moment you suspect, the simulation has to adapt or risk exposure. There's a theory floating out there called simulation consistency response. It's not a formal term, but it shows up in countless anecdotes, people who say they noticed weird glitches right after questioning reality. Streetlights flickering. People responding before a question is asked. Time skipping. That eerie feeling of déjà vu layered onto itself. Here's a weird fact: in some quantum physics experiments, like the famous double-slit test particles, behave differently depending on whether they're being observed. It's as if the universe cares if someone's watching, like a code that only resolves when rendered. And you're the observer, or the observed, or both. Think about video games. When you turn your avatar's back on a rendered forest, the game unloads those assets to save memory. Nothing exists behind you until you turn around. What if your life is the same? You open the fridge. There's food. Close it. It disappears. Open it again, new configuration. You assume the milk was always there. But what if it just loaded in? There's no proof. Of course. Just patterns, hunches, glitches, coincidences too neat to ignore. You think of someone you haven't seen in years, and they text you. You dream of a song you've never heard, and it plays on the radio the next morning. Statistically meaningless, emotionally significant. Now, here's the philosophical migraine. If the simulation is good enough, if it perfectly mimics reality, then how would you ever know you were in it? You wouldn't. That's the point. To the simulated mind, the simulation is real. It passes all tests. The physics work. The emotions hurt. The pizza tastes like regret and garlic. It's all internally consistent. So instead of asking, is this a simulation? Maybe we should ask, would it even matter? Because real or not, your thoughts feel true. Your sadness still stings. Your laughter still counts. Even if it's all code, it's meaningful code. You're not less you just because your atoms are rendered. Besides, if this is a simulation, someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure you're comfortable enough to fall asleep to a podcast about it. That's hospitality. And if this isn't a simulation, well, it's still weirdly impressive that you can imagine one so vividly, which says something about how powerful your brain is. But let's be honest, your brain also forgets where you put your keys. Thinks of witty comebacks 3 hours too late, and can't tell if you're hungry or just bored. So maybe we don't put it in charge of deciding what's real. Still, the suspicion lingers, like a screensaver, a low-res question waiting for you to stop moving. What if nothing is loading until you look? You try to catch it in the act. You spin suddenly. You open a drawer. You knock on the wall, expecting it to echo hollow. But everything stays solid, normal, rendered. And just when you let your guard down, the simulation surprises you. You find a penny from a year that doesn't exist. You hear a voice say your name in an empty house. You dream of a moment that hasn't happened yet. You wake up wondering, did I glitch or did the world? So here's your nightly conspiracy, delivered gently like warm tea. You might be real, you might be rendered, but the difference doesn't change how it feels to fall asleep. Close your eyes and imagine you are in a soft chamber, wrapped in pixels and breath. Outside, nothing exists until you want it to. And in this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, you're finally loading. Section 4, you reach out, your fingers extend slowly toward the edge of your blanket, or maybe a doorknob, or someone's hand. The point is, you're about to make contact, and then it hits you. What if nothing ever touches anything? It sounds absurd, right? Like the setup to a bad joke. A proton and an electron walk into a bar and never actually meet. But according to physics, not pop science, but the hard, math-crunching kind touch is an illusion. You never really touch anything. There's this thing called electromagnetic repulsion, and it's the invisible bouncer at the nightclub of matter. Your atoms and the atoms of that table, or that pillow, or that other human being, they repel each other. Always. At the subatomic level, they stay just far enough apart that they never truly collide. The sensation of touch. It's your nervous system throwing a virtual reality party in your brain. A vivid illusion so convincing you could swear you felt the wood grain, or the skin's warmth, or the weight of the world. But nope. It's all signals, pressure waves, neuron fireworks, like when your phone buzzes in your pocket, and it's not even there. Philosophers and physicists still argue about what this means. If our bodies don't really connect with anything, if we're all just finely tuned fields floating close but never merging, then what is physicality? What's it mean to hold someone's hand if you never actually hold it? Here's a weird fact: when astronauts come back from zero gravity, they often describe phantom limbs or misfiring pressure sensations. Their brains forgot how to interpret touch. After weeks of floating, the illusion broke, and putting socks back on, it felt like pressing their feet into alien slime. So maybe what we call touch is just a shared hallucination, convenient, reliable, but ultimately fake. Think about hugs. Think about the way someone's arms wrap around you, warm and certain. Now imagine those atoms never touched yours. Not once. Not ever. And yet, you felt connected, protected, maybe even healed. Because the magic of touch isn't in the physics. It's in the perception. You don't need collision. You need meaning. And your brain is more than happy to supply it. Remember that time you sat in the sun, and the warmth on your skin felt like forgiveness. Or the moment your fingers brushed across a page in a book you loved, and it felt like the words were pressing back. That wasn't molecular interaction. That was interpretation. And interpretation is everything. Let's play a sleepy game. Hold out your hand mentally, if you're already under the covers. Now imagine you're touching the surface of the moon. You feel the cold, the dust, the impossible distance between fingers and craters. Did you really feel it? Of course not. And yet, something happened. Your neurons lit up. Your imagination filled in the gaps. So what's the difference between imagining touch and experiencing it? Not much, according to your brain. In fact, studies show that imagined sensations activate many of the same brain regions as real ones. Whether you actually bite into a lemon or just imagine it, vividly saliva starts to flow. Your face winces. Your body believes. That's why VR works. That's why dreams leave imprints. That's why you wake up after a nightmare with your heart racing like you just ran through a fire. Because your body is the gullible best friend of your mind. And your mind, well, it's the best liar you've ever met. So next time you press your hand against the wall, or graze your fingers along a sleeping pet, or run them through your hair while deep in thought, know this. You are surfing a cushion of atomic resistance. You are floating in place, like a ghost pretending to be a person. But that's not a bad thing. That's not scary. That's kind of beautiful. Because it means every time you feel the world, you're co-creating it. You and your neurons. You and the illusion. You and the story of contact. There's a word for this kind of thinking phenomenology, the philosophical study of experience from the first-person perspective. What it feels like to be you. What it's like to touch without touching. Phenomenologists don't care if a chair is real. They care how it feels to sit in it. And maybe that's the better question to ask as you drift off. Not, is this real, but what does this feel like? So as your body gets heavier or lighter, depending on your brain's mood tonight, let the illusion of touch be your lullaby. Let the mattress you never fully touch cradle the version of you that never fully settles. Because in the end, maybe nothing needs to touch. Maybe presence is enough. Section 5. You're eating something. You're not sure what it's soft, warm, familiar. There's cinnamon, maybe, or vanilla. A flavor that doesn't live in the food so much as in you. Because suddenly, you're not here anymore. You're back in a kitchen. Not your kitchen. The kitchen, whatever that means. Maybe there's a humming refrigerator, a faded calendar on the wall, and the muffled laughter of someone who's no longer alive. You haven't traveled, not physically, just sensory teleportation, triggered by taste. This is the strange magic of memory and food. A trick so potent neuroscientists call it Proustian recall, named after Marcel Proust, who famously had his entire childhood flood back from the taste of a madeleine dipped in tea. That's the weird fact for this section. Flavor isn't just on your tongue, it's in your brain. And your brain, darling sleeper, is a sentimental little liar. When you eat something nostalgic, you're not just experiencing taste, you're experiencing a reconstruction, a whole mood, summoned like a hologram from your hippocampus. And here's the twist. The thing you remember probably didn't even taste that good. Because your memories aren't accurate. They're emotional. Scientists still argue about how memory and emotion interact, whether feelings enhance recall or distort it. But one thing's clear, your taste buds don't work alone. The real flavor lives in the context. That bowl of cereal you loved at age 8, it wasn't special because of the crunch. It was special because you were sitting on shag carpet watching cartoons. And your only problem in life was how to sneak 2 more spoonfuls before the milk turned gray. Taste is a time machine. But like all time machines, it glitches. Imagine biting into your favorite food now. You expect the same comfort, the same hit of nostalgia, but something's off. The spice ratio, the texture, the setting. And that's when you realize you weren't chasing the flavor. You were chasing the feeling. And feelings don't come pre-packaged. They're built in context, with temperature and smell and who was laughing next to you when you ate it. Let's get scientific for a second, but soft, sleepy scientific. Your brain processes flavor in a mashup of sensory inputs: taste from your tongue, smell from your nose, texture from your somatosensory system, and memory from your cortex. This combo platter forms a flavor illusion. and that illusion, it's fragile. Change the lighting in the room, suddenly your red wine tastes like vinegar. Serve strawberry yogurt in a blue container, it's rated less sweet. You can actually trick people into tasting flavors that aren't there, just by tweaking the soundtrack or color scheme. Reality, it seems, is seasoning. You probably remember a time when a smell brought you to tears, not because the scent was intense, but because it carried a moment you forgot you remembered. Fresh rain on asphalt, your dad's aftershave, burned toast on a Sunday morning when nobody was really mad, but everyone pretended to be. These aren't just sensory cues, they're bookmarks. Your mind slips its finger between the pages of your past and flips back. And the food, it's just the password. One time, a woman in a study described tasting a dish she hadn't eaten since childhood and bursting into tears because she suddenly remembered her grandmother's voice, not what she said, just the cadence, the love hidden in the vowels. That's how fragile this Hokoti operation is. We think taste is about salt and sugar, but it's really about memory and meaning. Philosophers have argued for centuries about the qualia of experience, that is, the what it's like, ness of things. What is it like to taste honey or hear a violin or miss someone? The problem is, we can never know if your red is my red or if your cinnamon is my cinnamon. All we have is metaphor, and you, poor sleeper, are trapped in a body full of metaphors pretending to be reality. So what does this mean for the food you're tasting now, that cozy late-night snack, that sip of tea? It means you're not just feeding your body, you're feeding your past. You're reminding yourself that you've existed before now, that you've felt safe, or warm, or loved. And that's worth chewing on. So go ahead. Take another imaginary bite. Let the flavor of memory flood you. It doesn't matter if the dish ever existed. What matters is that it made you feel real. Because sometimes, the only thing tethering you to reality is the way your mind drizzles the past over your tongue like syrup. You swallow, you sigh, and somewhere inside, a door opens to a room you forgot you built. You don't need a menu, you just need time. Time, and maybe a little cinnamon. Section 6. You're alone in your room. It's quiet, maybe too quiet, and then faintly, you hear your name. You freeze. Was that someone calling you? You listen harder, but there's nothing now. No footsteps, no voices, just the hum of the fan, the whisper of the walls, the static of your own thoughts. You start to wonder if you imagined it. You probably did. And that, dear sleeper, is where things get weird. Because your brain loves to invent sound. This is the mystery of phantom voices when you hear something that isn't there, but your mind believes it so fully that for a second, you'd bet money it was real. Maybe it was a song that doesn't exist, a laugh with no source, a voice in your dream that echoed into waking. Don't worry, you're not broken. You're not crazy. You're just human. It turns out, auditory hallucinations are surprisingly common. They're not all scary, and they don't necessarily mean anything's wrong. In fact, scientists still argue about what causes them, whether they're glitches in prediction models or just over-enthusiastic neural guesswork. See, your brain is a prediction engine. It's constantly trying to anticipate what should come next based on context, emotion, memory, and desire. And sometimes, it jumps the gun. You're expecting a text, so you hear your phone buzz. You're thinking of someone, so you hear their voice in the next room. You're halfway asleep, and suddenly your mom is calling you from the hallway even though she lives 4 hours away and hasn't used that tone since you were 7. That's the auditory false positive your brain guessing wrong, but doing it so confidently that it still feels real. Here's a weird fact. Some people with hearing loss report more auditory hallucinations, not fewer. When the ears go quiet, the brain turns up the internal volume like a lonely radio trying to catch a signal. And what it catches is you, your fears, your longings, your unfinished conversations. Ever notice how some songs get stuck in your head and won't leave for days? There's a name for that too. Earworms. These are neural loops that your mind plays on repeat. Not because you like them, but because your brain's trying to finish the phrase, resolve the tension. It's like your brain doesn't know how to be quiet, and in silence, it starts to whisper. So when you hear your name whispered in an empty house, remember you are not being haunted. You are being remembered by yourself. Your mind is echoing versions of you from other moments, like a museum of conversations, flickering back to life. Philosophers love this stuff because it pokes at the boundary between perception and reality. If you hear something, but there's no source, did you really hear it? If the sound happened entirely in your head, is it less real or is it just a different kind of real? This is where the idea of internal realism comes in. It says maybe reality doesn't exist out there as an independent thing. Maybe it exists in here as an organized experience. And if that's true, then every phantom voice counts. Every imagined call, every dreamed sentence. They're all part of reality, not errors, but evidence. It's a little like dreaming while awake. Microscopic hallucinations we mistake for fact. One time, I swore I heard someone shout, "Wait," while I was walking alone at night. I turned, no one there. But my heart raced. My legs froze, because even a fake voice can trigger a real response. So maybe the line between imagination and reality isn't as clear as we think. Maybe your brain isn't lying. It's just storytelling with sound. And you're the main character in a plot written in whispers. Let's play one more quiet game before sleep. Close your eyes. Listen to the silence. Now. Imagine someone you miss saying your name. Feel the warmth of it, the rhythm, the particular way their voice curved around the syllables. Did you hear it? Was that just imagination? Or did you bring a memory to life? There's a kind of poetry in the way your brain fills the silence. It doesn't like absence, so it builds presence. Maybe that's what consciousness is. A constant radio show of meaning, broadcast from the inside out. And maybe, just maybe, that voice you hear in the dark is yours, gently reminding you that you're still here, even when the world is quiet, even when no one calls, you are still listening. Section 7. You open your eyes to a sky so blue it almost feels fake. It's not just blue, though. It's the kind of blue that makes you squint. A blue so crisp it hums. A blue that makes you wonder whether your brain is actually doing all the heavy lifting. And spoiler, it is. Because here's the twist, blue doesn't really exist. Not out there. At least, not in the sky. Not in your walls. Not even in that suspiciously bright sports drink in your fridge. Blue is a mental invention. A private performance your brain puts on just for you. And every time you look up, it's like your neurons are saying, "Ta-da, see, light doesn't come in colors. Light comes in wavelengths measured in nanometers, around 475 nanometers." Your eyes go, "Yeah, Let's call that blue, but the light itself, it's just electromagnetic radiation. No flavor, no hue, just energy. The color happens after the fact once it gets to your brain, and scientists still argue about how we even agree on what we're seeing. How do we know your blue is my blue? We never have. That's the problem of qualia again. Those raw, unshareable fragments of experience. You can describe blue, you can paint it, you can point at it, but you can never upload your exact sensation of it to another person, which means every color is a lonely miracle. Here's a weird fact. Ancient languages often had no word for blue. Not Greek, not Chinese, not Hebrew. In Homer's Odyssey, the ocean is described as wine dark, not blue. Some historians believe early humans didn't even see blue, or at least didn't categorize it as a separate thing. They saw brightness, darkness, blood, sky, but not blue as a concept, until we gave it a name. That's when the illusion solidified, because your brain uses language to shape perception. Studies show that speakers of languages with more color terms can distinguish more shades. So color is partially learned. It's trained into your brain like a party trick. This one's teal. This one's periwinkle. That's sadness with a dash of mint. So what you're seeing right now, that vibrant, soul-lifting hue above your head, it's a guess. A beautifully evolved, culturally informed hallucination. And that hallucination is so convincing. We build entire moods around it. Feeling blue. Out of the blue. Blue Monday. True blue. It's the color of calm and melancholy and trust and sadness and dreams. That's a lot of responsibility for a wavelength. But your brain doesn't mind. It loves assigning meaning to meaningless light. Like when you look at a sunset and feel romantic. Or when neon signs in a rainy alley make you feel like a misunderstood detective. Your brain takes input and adds context. Let's get a little neurological now, in a soft, sleepy way. You have 3 types of cone cells in your eyes. These cones are like mini light detectors, each tuned to a different range of wavelengths, short blue, medium green, and long red. But your brain doesn't just accept their input. It compares them. It subtracts one from the other. It builds color from differences. So color, as it turns out, is a calculated disagreement between cells. Not a thing you see, a thing your brain creates out of conflict. You don't see color. You interpret neural arguments as beauty. Let that keep you up for a second. Or don't. You're probably already drifting. Let's play one more game tonight. Picture a color you've never seen. Try it. Can't do it. Right. Because your imagination is limited to the palette your brain has been trained on. That's why some people with tetrachromacy, a rare genetic condition where people have 4 types of cones, can see millions more shades than the rest of us. Their reality is painted in hues we literally can't comprehend. To them, our world might look dull. To us, their world might as well be magic. So next time you gaze at the sky, or a peacock's feathers, or a neon open sign, just know you're not seeing reality. You're seeing your brain's best guess. And yet, it's beautiful. Because maybe truth doesn't have to be objective to be meaningful. Maybe your version of blue is exactly what you need. A private lullaby sung in light. And even if the color doesn't exist out there in the world, it exists in you. Section 8. You're replaying a memory. It's recent or maybe not. You're sure it happened yesterday or last week, or when you were 6. You see it clearly, the place, the voices, the way the light filtered through the trees like slow-motion glitter. But something's off. The colors seem warmer than they probably were. The dialogue feels suspiciously clever. And you, in the memory, are just a little more graceful than you remember being. You've just stumbled into a time loop, but not the kind with wormholes or flux capacitors. This is the memory paradox, the strange, sneaky way your brain edits the past like a moody screenwriter. Every time you recall a memory, you don't just retrieve it, you reconstruct it. And that reconstruction is a remix. Scientists still argue about how accurate our memories actually are, but the short answer is not very. There's even a term for it, memory reconsolidation. When you remember something, your brain temporarily destabilizes the memory, making it malleable. Then it stores it again, subtly altered. So every time you recall that beach trip, or that breakup, or that awkward 7th grade talent show, you're changing the memory a little. Your past is less like a photograph and more like a Wikipedia page. And you're the anonymous editor. Here's a weird fact. Eyewitness testimony, despite being dramatic and emotionally powerful, is notoriously unreliable. People have confidently identified suspects who weren't even in the same state at the time. Because memory isn't a video file, it's more like an interpretive dance performed by neurons wearing blindfolds. And you're the audience, applauding something that maybe never happened the way you remember. Let's zoom out for a second. You live in time, or at least you think you do. You feel like it flows second by second, like a string pulling you forward, but your brain doesn't experience time that way. Your perception of time is elastic. It stretches, compresses, snaps. Have you ever noticed how boring moments feel long, but exciting ones vanish in a blink? That's because your brain gauges time based on how much new information it processes. The more stimuli, colors, sounds, emotions, the longer the moment feels. But when you're in a routine, time slips by unnoticed. So time isn't just ticking away outside you, it's being measured inside you. One experiment even showed that people perceive time as slowing down during near-death experiences. But not because time actually changed. It's just that the brain cranks up its processing speed, logging every detail like a frantic secretary on deadline. So now, try this sleepy thought. If time is flexible inside your head, and memory is constantly rewritten, then what's real about the past? Maybe it's not the events themselves. Maybe it's how you feel about them now, that fight you had. Maybe the anger's faded and the sorrow remains, that trip you regret skipping. Maybe your brain added a sunny filter to make it hurt more. You're not just remembering, you're narrating. And the narrator has feelings. Philosophers like Augustine and Heidegger tangled with this too. They believed time wasn't a thing we move through. It's a thing we carry inside us. The past lives in memory. The future in anticipation. The present. That's the only moment that ever really happens. And even it vanishes before we can name it. So when you lay here, drifting, thinking about yesterday or last year or childhood, you're not time traveling. You're time weaving, pulling threads from every version of you that's ever been. And those threads, they don't stay put. You tug on one, and it wiggles into the future. You color a memory, and it colors how you see yourself today. Your story is self-illustrated, and also self-erasing. Let's play a gentle game. Think of a memory that makes you smile. See the faces, hear the sounds, taste the background. Now, make one small change, move the sun, add laughter where there wasn't any. Replace anxiety with peace. Feels real, doesn't it? Because your brain isn't trying to archive truth. It's trying to preserve you, the version of you that can sleep at night, the version that survived, the version that's allowed to forgive and forget, or remember and reshape. So maybe the past doesn't live in calendars or clocks. Maybe it lives in your willingness to imagine it kindly. And if your brain can't tell the difference between what was and what feels like it was, maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's a mercy. You're not stuck in the past. You're the artist of it. And as you close your eyes now, let memory soften. Let the hard edges blur. Let the sad parts fade into light. Time may bend, but tonight, you do not have to hold it straight. Section 9, you're scrolling, not aimlessly, of course. You're just checking something. A quick glance, a flick of the thumb, a little buzz of dopamine for the road. And suddenly, you're swimming in consensus. Everyone agrees. This is the best show. That's the worst person. This product changed their life. That theory totally debunked, or totally true depending on who's trending. It's like you've stumbled into a reality constructed out of likes, shares, and half-remembered Reddit threads. A place where truth is measured in upvotes and retweets. Welcome to reality by agreement. This isn't new. Humans have always relied on shared belief to stitch their worlds together. From ancient myths to modern laws, society is built on collective fictions, things that exist because enough people believe in them. Money fiction, borders fiction, Monday, utter fiction, but powerful ones. And now, with the internet, those fictions spread faster than ever. You don't just believe what your village believes. You believe what your algorithm serves you, like a buffet of pre-selected realities, optimized for your confirmation bias. Scientists, sociologists, and philosophers still argue about how online consensus warps our sense of what's actually real. When enough people believe something, flat Earth, ghost sightings, pineapple on pizza, it starts to feel true. Not because of evidence, but because of repetition. There's a psychological trick at play here, the illusory truth effect. The more you hear something, the more likely you are to believe it, even if it's false, especially if it's catchy. Say something 3 times in a row and it starts to sound reliable. That's how memes become facts. That's how opinions become identities. That's how reality gets crowdsourced. Here's a weird fact during the Cold War. A CIA project planted fake stories in foreign newspapers. Stories that were then picked up by U.S. outlets as credible foreign sources. A loop of illusion feeding itself until even the original authors weren't sure what was real. And you're living in a global version of that loop. Every scroll, every post, every headline, you're sampling a communal hallucination. It's not bad, necessarily. Shared beliefs help us cooperate. They give us culture, language, community, but they also blur the line between truth and popularity. Ever find yourself nodding along with something just because the comments are enthusiastic, or doubting your opinion because it only got 2 likes? You're not weak-willed. You're human. Your brain is wired for social proof. We evolved in tribes, where going against the group could literally get you eaten. So we adapted when everyone agrees. We tend to follow. It's called informational conformity. Your brain assumes if all these people believe it, it's probably true. But what if all those people are also just guessing? Let's play a small, quiet game. Think of something you believe not because you researched it, but because it just feels true. Maybe something about sleep or psychology. or what foods are bad. Now ask yourself, where did that belief come from? Did you test it? Did you hear it from a friend? Did you absorb it from 1,000 subtle cues over time? Chances are it came from osmosis, belief by proximity. We do this with everything from fashion trends to political ideologies. Beliefs spread not by logic, but by vibe. So here's the big question. If enough people believe a thing, does that make it real? Social reality says yes, but physical reality says, I don't care what you think, gravity still wins. There's a tension here. A world where facts can be crowd-edited, but consequences still show up with receipts. That's why it's so tricky, because belief does shape experience. If you believe the world is kind, you act kindly. If you believe people are cruel, you brace for impact, and then the world responds in kind. It's not magic. It's psychology. It's called the self-fulfilling prophecy, and it means your beliefs don't just reflect reality, they build it. So yes, reality can be warped by consensus, but also by attitude, by memory, by mood, which means tonight, as you scroll through this quiet story, you have a choice. You can choose to believe that the world is confusing and fractured and probably simulated. Or you can choose to believe that somewhere, a handful of minds, yours included, are still asking soft, slow questions, still wondering, still listening, still creating reality together. Not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. So close the app, dim the screen, and step into a quieter kind of agreement, the kind where silence feels true, and breath is the only proof you need. Section 10. You're waking up inside a dream, but something feels off. The light is too even, the walls look painted on, and you're pretty sure that dog over there just whispered your name. You tell yourself it's fine, just a dream. Then you wake up. Except, no, you're still in the dream, and that's when it hits you. You don't know how many layers deep you are. Welcome to the philosopher's dream loop, a concept older than coffee, and nearly as disorienting. It goes like this. What if everything you're experiencing right now is a dream? What if this moment, this podcast, this blanket, this feeling of being you is just a really detailed hallucination generated by a dreaming brain? And what if you never wake up? The French philosopher René Descartes famously wrestled with this question. He asked, how can I be sure I'm not dreaming right now? His solution was to find something so undeniably certain, no dream could fake it. He settled on, I think, therefore I am. But even Descartes was a little shaky on that point, because dreams can feel incredibly real. And in many ways, they're constructed using the same mental architecture as waking life memories, sensory fragments, emotional tones. In fact, scientists still argue about how to clearly distinguish dream states from conscious reality. There's no single switch that flips. It's more like a dimmer, a soft fade in and out between layers of awareness. Here's a weird fact during lucid dreaming. People can become aware they're dreaming while still inside the dream. They can fly, bend time, talk to dream versions of their exes, risky but informative. They can even ask the dream questions like, what's the meaning of life, and get answers. And yet, they still wake up unsure if the answer came from their subconscious or some mysterious dream logic we haven't mapped yet. Because dreams don't just mess with your sense of place, they mess with your sense of truth. You can believe the impossible in a dream and not even blink. You can accept that a giraffe is your dentist, or that your high school locker is now a spaceship. In that world, it all makes perfect sense, until it doesn't. The scary part. Waking life might be the same, only the rules are stricter. You might just be living inside the most convincing dream ever coded. One with consistent physics, annoying errands, and recurring characters who insist they're real. But what is real? Anyway, here's a philosopher's trick. Imagine this whole world is a dream, and always has been. Could you prove otherwise? Not just to someone else, but to yourself you can't. And that's the loop. It's the same loop that inspired The Matrix, Inception, ancient Buddhist teachings, and that weird feeling you get when a stranger knows your name. Some people find this idea unsettling. Others find it freeing. Because if life is a dream, maybe that explains the surreal parts. The way time stutters. The way people reappear with different faces. The way your emotions shift the whole mood of the world. Like adjusting a filter. And if you're dreaming, maybe you have more control than you think. Lucid dreaming suggests that even if you're not fully awake, you can still wake up within the dream. You can become the dreamer and the dream. So what would you do? Would you change something? Would you fly? Would you let go of all the things that don't make sense and just rest? Because sometimes, the wisest thing a dreamer can do is surrender. To stop questioning the physics and start enjoying the sky. Let's play one last game before we drift deeper. Close your eyes if they're not already. Now picture yourself standing in a long hallway of doors, each one labeled with a different version of you. Some are asleep, some are awake, some are dreaming about being awake, and somewhere in the middle is the version listening to this voice. You don't have to open any doors, just know they're there. Every possible version of you, every dream, every belief, stacked like postcards from other lives you may or may not have lived. And maybe, just maybe, this moment, this strange little hallway, this podcast in your ears, this gentle rhythm of your breathing is the closest thing to waking you've ever felt. Or maybe you'll wake up again in 5 minutes. Or maybe this is the dream, but it doesn't matter. Because right now, it's real enough. Section 11. You're standing in front of a mirror. You look yourself in the eye. That face, those lines, that slightly suspicious left eyebrow. Familiar. Right. You know this person. You've known them your whole life. Or have you? Because the longer you stare, the weirder it gets. That face, your face starts to feel distant, like it's not really yours. Like you're looking at a mask you've worn for so long. You forgot it was a costume. This is called the strange face illusion, and it's real. Sit in front of a mirror long enough, under dim lighting, and your brain starts to hallucinate. Faces warp, eyes shift. Sometimes you see strangers, sometimes your face melts, and sometimes the face looks back at you like it was here first. It's a psychological effect, but it's also a philosophical wormhole, because it asks, who are you? Really, we like to believe in a stable self, a you that's been riding shotgun your whole life. But neuroscience disagrees. There is no single spot in the brain labeled self, no command center, no pilot. Instead, your identity is a mosaic memories, habits, preferences, reactions all tied together with a narrative. A story you keep telling yourself, every day, sometimes without realizing it. Philosophers still argue about this. Is the self an illusion, or is it the most real thing we know? The Buddhist concept of anatta says there is no permanent self, only a flowing process of awareness, constantly changing. Meanwhile, Western philosophers like David Hume called the self a bundle of perceptions, a kind of mental slideshow. And if that's true, then who you are tonight isn't who you were yesterday. Here's a weird fact. There's a condition called dissociative identity disorder, where the brain hosts multiple distinct identities, each with their own memories, behaviors, even allergies. That's right, some identities are allergic to things others aren't. So what does that say about you? That you're a single being, or that you're the currently active tab in a browser full of selves? Ever noticed how you act differently around different people? Your voice changes, your posture, your laugh. That's not fake. That's adaptation. You're not one thing. You're a shapeshifter. But because your brain craves consistency, it backfills a story. It says, no, that's all me. That's who I am. Even when the data says otherwise. Let's play a sleepy game. Imagine you've never seen yourself in a mirror before. No photos, no selfies, no reflections. Who would you be? Would you still wear those clothes? Speak with that rhythm, move like that? Or would you be a mystery, a floating awareness without shape? Looking at the world through borrowed eyes. Here's something else: your sense of self is deeply tied to your body. But your body is always changing. Every 7 years, nearly every cell has been replaced. So technically, you're not the same person you were, literally. And yet, you remember being that person. So where does you begin? Is it your memories, your values, your Google search history? What if your story is the only real part, the fragile thread tying together thousands of moments into a pattern you can recognize? But even stories change. We rewrite. We forget. We heal. Maybe the you listening now isn't just a dreamer inside a brain, but a storyteller. And the story isn't always factual. It's emotional. You don't remember exactly what happened. You remember how it felt. And how it feels is what makes it real. So when you stare into the mirror and feel like something's watching back, that's not a glitch. That's your mind asking for a narrator. Someone to say, "This is me. I exist. I'm still here, even if me is a moving target, even if I is more verb than noun." So tonight, don't worry about who you are. Worry less about defining yourself, and more about being gentle with whatever version of you showed up. Because the you in this moment, drifting under blankets, halfway between thought and sleep, that version is valid. That version is enough. And if tomorrow brings a different version, so be it. You are not a fixed point. You are a constellation. Section 12. You're standing in a crowd, not a big one, just enough people to make your phone feel heavy in your pocket. You glance around. Everyone's doing the same thing, eyes down, screens glowing, thumbs twitching like nervous moths. And you get this strange sensation. You're surrounded, but somehow, still alone. It's a modern paradox, never more connected, never more isolated. This is the illusion of presence in the digital age. You're always there, just not here. And your brain, it's trying to keep up. See, the human brain evolved in tribes. We're wired for eye contact, facial micro-expressions, voice tone. And yet most of your interactions now are silent blips, texts, likes, ghosted group chats that fizzle like soda. You know more people than ever. But how many would notice if you vanished? That's not a judgment. That's a fact of the new reality. And philosophers and psychologists still argue over what it means. Because technology hasn't just changed how we communicate, it's changed how we exist. There's even a term for the disorientation you feel when navigating between physical and digital identities: context collapse. It's the friction of trying to be the same you in multiple places at once. And it's exhausting. You curate a version of yourself online. You filter your thoughts, pose your dinner, type LOL when you didn't even smirk. And all the while, some part of your brain is screaming, "This isn't me." But it's also not you. It's a mirror tilted, pixelated, but still reflecting something true. Here's a weird fact. Researchers found that people often feel more themselves in anonymous forums than in real life. Because anonymity removes social pressure. Without the fear of judgment, the masks fall away. But what happens when all the masks start to feel more real than the face? Let's play a quiet game. Imagine you delete all your accounts. Everyone. No more posts. No more profiles. No more digital breadcrumbs. Would you still exist? Of course. But what would change is the feedback loop. You'd stop being constantly reminded who you are by what others think of you. And that, right there, is the trap. We become mirrors of each other, trapped in a hall of reflection, never sure which version is true. So maybe the real question isn't, who am I? It's who am I when no one's watching? Think about that the next time you open an app out of habit. When you scroll not for fun, but for reassurance. When you wonder if silence means disapproval. You're not broken. You're just hungry for something deeper than likes. Connection, attention, recognition. All ancient cravings, dressed up in blue light. So how do we anchor ourselves? Some philosophers suggest embodied presence, the practice of returning to your senses, your breath, your body. Because your phone can't feel the wind on your face. Your profile picture can't listen to the hum of night sounds. Only you can. So tonight, let the devices fade. Let your body speak louder than your screen. You are more than a username, more than a profile, more than a collection of emoji reactions. You are not a brand. You are a being, breathing, changing, unfolding in real time. And yes, you might post again tomorrow. That's okay. But for now, close your eyes. Let the false presence dissolve and return to yourself. Section 13. You're lying in a machine. It's cold, clinical, the kind of place where voices echo even when people whisper. A dull hum vibrates through your spine, and above you, a ring-shaped device begins to spin. You're inside an fMRI scanner. A doctor in another room watches your brain light up in real time, like a weather map of thoughts. One region flares when you hear your name. Another flickers when you think of someone you love. And somewhere in that glowing tangle of neurons is supposed to be you. Except, where are you exactly? This is the paradox of the ghost in the MRI. You see the brain working, calculating, recalling, reacting, but the self, that quiet observer behind your eyes, that voice inside your head, doesn't show up on the scan. There's no little glowing you waving from the amygdala, no tiny operator tucked into the folds of the prefrontal cortex, and yet you feel present, aware, centered. So what gives neuroscientists still argue about consciousness? Is it an emergent property of complexity? A side effect of neural feedback loops? Or is it something deeper, something the brain receives rather than produces? Here's a weird fact. If you stimulate certain regions of the brain with electrodes, patients report out-of-body experiences. They feel themselves floating above the room, watching their own body below. One guy even reported seeing himself from behind, which made him briefly question whether he was in his body at all. So the sense of "I am here," that inner GPS, isn't as reliable as we'd like to think. It can be hacked, it can be glitched, it can be fabricated, and that's unsettling. Because if you can't point to a single place in your brain and say, "That's me," then what are you? Let's try a sleepy metaphor. Your brain is a library, billions of books, some fiction, some documentary, some still being written. And your consciousness. It's the flashlight. It moves from shelf to shelf, highlighting one book at a time. Whatever the beam lands on, thoughts, memories, dreams, becomes your reality. But the flashlight isn't the book. It doesn't contain the story. It simply reveals it. And if that's true, maybe you aren't the brain. Maybe you're the light. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some scientists claim consciousness is just an illusion, a useful trick the brain plays on itself to streamline decision-making. But even if that's the case, it's one hell of an illusion. The kind that writes poetry, falls in love, listens to podcasts while falling asleep. The kind that, right now, is trying to make sense of itself. Let's play a game. Think of your earliest memory. Try to really feel it, not just the facts, but the moment, the texture of it. What were you seeing? Hearing, smelling now. Ask yourself, were you really there? Or is it just a story your brain assembled from fragments? That's the tricky part. You're never fully in the memory. You're always remembering the memory. Even your sense of self in the past is a projection, like a character in a movie you wrote long after the credits rolled. And yet, here you are, wondering, feeling, trying to place yourself on the map. You are the only thing you cannot fully observe. You can't turn around fast enough to catch yourself in the act of being. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the self is not a location, but a process. A song the brain sings over and over until the rhythm feels familiar. Or maybe it's a ghost. Not spooky, just shy. A presence too subtle to scan, too vast to fit in an image, too real to define. So tonight, as your thoughts begin to soften and your body begins to blur into the bed, let the ghost be gentle. Let it float. It doesn't need coordinates. It doesn't need proof. It only needs quiet. Section 14. You're chasing a question. At first, it feels like a straight line. You ask, what's real, and expect an answer. Maybe a scientific one. Maybe something philosophical with just enough gravity to make you feel clever. But the deeper you go, the more the path starts to curve. You double back. You trip over paradoxes. You realize every answer spawns two more questions. And before long, you're not chasing the question anymore, it's chasing you. This is the question that bites its own tail, like a snake eating itself, like a thought that loops forever. In philosophy, this is called a recursive epistemic paradox, a self-referential loop that collapses under its own logic. Like asking, can I trust my brain? When my brain is the one asking the question, it's the kind of thought that makes you blink really slowly and forget where your keys are. But don't worry, you're in good company. Socrates made a career out of asking questions with no stable answers. Descartes doubted everything except doubt itself. Even modern thinkers still argue about whether we can ever step outside our own perceptions to verify reality objectively. And here's the kicker, asking what's real might change what's real. Because attention isn't passive, it's participatory. In quantum mechanics, there's something called the observer effect. The idea that measuring a system can alter its state. Not because of magical intention, but because observation requires interaction. You can't look without touching. You can't measure without making a mark. What if that's true of reality at every level? What if by questioning reality, you bend it? Here's a weird fact: when people take placebo sugar pills with no active ingredient, they often get better. Their brains release endorphins, their symptoms ease, their perception shifts reality inside their bodies. Not because the pill did something, but because belief became biology. So now, let's play a sleepy game. Picture a door. Behind it is the answer to everything: what's real, what's true, what's you. But here's the twist: you can open the door. But the moment you do, the answer changes. Because your expectations, your hopes, your fear, they color the answer. Would you still open it? Or would you choose not knowing? Sometimes, mystery is kinder than certainty. That's why dreams rarely resolve. Why riddles echo longer than solutions. Why the best stories end with a question mark instead of a period. You don't need to catch the tail of the question. You just need to recognize that it's yours. And like a snake in the dark, it curls around your thoughts, not to trap you, but to keep you warm. Here's something to carry into sleep. Reality might not be a thing you find. It might be a thing you make. Every belief, every memory, every laugh you shared and moment you misunderstood, they're all threads in the tapestry. And yes, that tapestry has holes. Yes, it tangles and twists, but it holds. Because even if truth slips through your fingers, even if certainty bites its own tail, the act of wondering, the reaching, that's real enough. So loosen your grip. Let the question circle. You don't need to answer it tonight. You just need to rest inside it. Section 15, you're floating, not in water, not in space, just in the slow, weightless drift of almost sleep. That place where thoughts dissolve into static, where you're not awake, not dreaming, but something in between. You feel the edges of your body blur. Time slows down. Your name, if someone said it, would sound foreign. This is the threshold. It's not a destination, it's a disappearing act. And here, on the final edge of this journey, let's ask the question one last time. How do you know what's real by now? You've gathered that reality is a performance. Your brain, the lighting director, your senses, the actors, your thoughts, the script half improvised, half remembered. You've seen how memory edits itself, how perception bends to belief, how truth gets crowdsourced, narrated, and wrapped in dream logic. But here's the quiet truth no one tells you. Knowing what's real isn't the same as feeling real. And that feeling, that's what matters. You feel real when someone laughs at your joke, when a song makes your chest ache, when a breeze smells like a childhood you can't name, when you touch a hand and it touches back. You feel real in connection. That's the thing all the simulations, dreams, illusions, and philosophical traps forget. You're not here to solve reality. You're here to experience it, to fall into it, to swim in the questions, not extract answers like math problems. Here's a weird fact. Some theories suggest the universe doesn't exist unless observed. That perception doesn't just reveal reality, it completes it. So in a way, reality might need you just as much as you need it. And if that's true, then you're being here tonight, breathing, listening, letting your thoughts tangle with these words that matters. You are not a glitch. You are not a dream that got out of hand. You are not a story someone else is telling. You are the storyteller. You are the dreamer. You are the observer the universe has been waiting for. Even if your memories shift, even if your sense of self flickers, even if you question everything you thought you knew, especially then, because in the end, Asking what's real is the most real thing you can do. So tonight, let go of needing answers. Let your questions curl around you like a blanket. Let your breath anchor you. Let the dark hold you gently. You've wandered through illusion, paradox, perception, and doubt. And now, you rest. You don't have to decide if the world is simulated. You don't have to solve the mind-body problem. You don't even have to remember everything in the morning. You just have to float. Here, now. Exactly as you are. No explanations. No conclusions. Just a soft yes to existence. A slow exhale into mystery.